Good evening. The earthquake that hit a remote part of western India early this morning killed at least 6,000 people and injured many more, according to government officials. The final figure, it said, could be much higher. Military relief and rescue teams fanning out across the region found what they called a human tragedy of unimaginable proportions. 50 villages were flattened as houses made of mud, stone and thatch shattered around people as they slept. Tens of thousands of relatives spent the day clawing through the debris with their bare hands in the search for survivors. The epicenter of the quake was 280 miles east of Bombay, affecting 3 provinces, although the province of Maharashtra appears to have borne the brunt of the devastation. In towns like Latur.
On September 30th, 1993, at approximately 3:45 a.m., while villages and towns all across the districts of Latur and Islamabad, India were asleep, a devastating earthquake triggered in these areas. The epicenter of the earthquake was located in Kalari, a town just outside of Latur. No scientist or citizen in these areas would have ever predicted they'd be experiencing an earthquake, let alone a 6.3 magnitude earthquake. The earthquake that occurred is considered an interplate earthquake. This is because the earthquake occurred nowhere remotely close to a plate boundary, which is an extreme rarity, so much that the chances of an earthquake occurring was once every 100,000 years. Because of this, there were no precautions practiced in this area, there were no seismic graphs to detect seismic waves, and the infrastructure in the towns and villages in these districts were poorly constructed because the idea of a building being able to sustain an earthquake was irrelevant due to the fact that no one believed an earthquake was possible in these areas. The cause of the earthquake is still being debated over to this day. Almost every earthquake is a result of shifting plate boundaries, but not this earthquake. It was nowhere near a plate boundary. After much speculation, scientists found 2 reasonable explanations for the cause. Some scientists claim that it was a result of the force released from the continuous crumpling of the Indian plate against the Eurasian plate. Others claim that it was a consequence of the pressure built up as a result of the reservoir constructed on the river Turna.
When the first tremor struck before 4 o'clock this morning, most people were still asleep. They were woken by what one survivor said was a rumbling sound, followed by what sounded like an explosion. During the next 2 hours, there were 5 separate tremors, leaving dozens of villages without a house standing. The shock of the devastation left many with little to do but mourn their dead. By sunset, more than 3,500 bodies had been recovered, and rescue work continued, coordinated by the Indian Army. In places, people have been found alive under the ruins of their houses, but even the Army has found it hard to reach remoter villages, and the final death toll is expected to rise as the hours pass.
The damage done in the districts of Latur and Islamabad was devastating. With a focal depth of 14 kilometers deep, it was a relatively shallow earthquake, which means less travel for energy waves to reach the surface and resulting in more damage. In the areas most affected by the earthquake, including Latur and Islamabad districts, the casualties and death rate was high, due in most part to the earthquake taking place in the middle of the night. With 16,000 injuries, over 8,000 people killed, 70 villages completely decimated, and 30,000 buildings completely destroyed, the Latur earthquake was the deadliest earthquake of 1993. The total estimated cost of damage was approximately $364 million in US dollars. In the end, after all the destruction and death, there was a lesson learned for those in the districts of Latur and Islamabad. It is that preparation, no matter where you live, is key. Taking precautions may not be